Cool. Let's get started. Thanks everyone for dialing in. Hi, and welcome to the FVM Dataverse Hackathon. To all those who are watching it live and all those who will be watching the recording later. My name is Nikki. I lead the Filecoin and IPFS Hackathons team at Protocol Labs, and I'm very excited to welcome you all to FVM Dataverse Hackathon. So in today's call, we are going to cover the hackathon logistics, an overview of why we should build an FVM, the exciting opportunities, and the hackathon tracks. And we'll end it with some next steps and an open Q&A for all those of you who are here who have questions. Right, let's jump right in. So hackathon logistics. How to not get lost during this hackathon. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We have Dawn covering the chat and responding to any questions that you all have. So we are currently at more than 3,000 hackers on DevPost who will start hacking for the FVM Dataverse Hackathon. Currently, there's representation from about 51 countries. And yeah, so this is going to be a fairly interesting bunch of people that you will be hacking with. What city are the attendees calling in from? Would you mind dropping it in the chat? I'm calling in from Dubai. Can I get a thumbs up if y'all are able to hear us in the chat? Cool. Let's keep going. Looking at the set of folks that you are hacking with, these are the skills. There's intermediate level Solidity developers, also beginners, and a lot of other experiences on board. Chat is disabled. Cool. I think everyone should be able to chat now. Nice. Yay, we got it working. Cool. Mexico City, California, from Delhi. All right. Yeah, so, and there's a lot of full stack developers in our cohort of hackers this time, and a bunch of other folks around as well. So we are here today, 1st of May, at the launch of the hackathon. We have a host of workshops coming up for you all over the next 3 days. We'll also follow it up with office hours, with other Q&A sessions and project feedback sessions for all the hackers in the following weeks, all the way up to May 23rd. That's when the hacking ends, and it'll be followed by judging. and we'll be announcing the winners on 31st of May. Let's jump into what are the resources. First of all is the hackathon website. Make sure you check it out. It has all of the prizes, all of the sponsor related information, all the learning resources posted by all the different sponsors linked over there. Do go through that. Discord. Is everyone over here on the IPFS Discord server? Okay, cool. If not, go to this link. This presentation will be available publicly after the call. I'll send it out via an email update and also drop the link in chat at the end of the call. So please be on the IPFS Discord server and request hacker role. The instructions on how to request hacker role are on dev post. In the update section, you need to DM the Galaxy bot with a specific code, and that is available in the update section. So all of the communication, the Q&A, office hours for this hackathon will be on Discord. So please make sure you are available. You're on the IPFS Discord server. Yeah, there's a lot of you here who are looking for teammates. There's 74 people looking for teammates right now. Go to the participants tab on DevPost website, and there's everyone, as most of you have listed, what are the skills, what are your interests. Go ahead and send a team up request. If you want to submit a project as a team, it's important for you to having been teamed up on the platform. So do go ahead and do that. We also have a Find a Team channel on Discord. So if you are looking to chat with someone on Discord before you team up with them, then try and find them on Discord. Workshops. All the workshops that are starting tomorrow can be found on the Filecoin and IPFS Hackathon's Google Calendar. The calendar is public. Add it to your calendar to get notified of the workshops that are starting from tomorrow. There's a lot of workshops from the FVM team here, and also from all the sponsors, partners who have put up bounties for this hackathon. Make sure you watch out for updates from DevPost. All the hackathon workshops, all the workshops, all the sessions, all the announcements will be sent out by the DevPost email, as well as we'll be putting up on Discord. Let's jump on to prizes. So for this hackathon, we have $60,000 in prizes from the FVM team and all the other sponsors put together. These are the different tracks. So in order to qualify for the hackathon, you need to be building on one of these tracks: data DAOs, DeFi, tools and infra, programmable storage markets, compute over data, or a wildcard for unique projects that don't fit into any of these tracks. But yes, building on FVM is a prerequisite to qualify for the hackathon. And we'll be jumping into details for each of these tracks in the later part of the call. Put together, these track prizes add up to $30,000. Let's move on to the sponsor prizes. So among the list of sponsors that we have Axelar. Axelar is, they deliver a secure interchain communication, and they're a bridging solution. So you can basically build any application that would require you to bridge to any other chain with the help of Axelar. Yeah, the total prize money is $10,000 for best use of Axelar's general message passing in your project. The second sponsor is Tableland. Tableland is an open source permissionless cloud database built on SQLite. Read and write tamper-proof data from apps, data pipelines, or EVM smart contracts using Tableland. The total prize pool is $5,000. All of these details are also available on the hacker guide that's linked on the DevPost website. Spheron, $5,000 in prizes for the best use of Spheron Storage SDK, and FVM, of course. And this is a way to simplify your Web3 infrastructure and store host data seamlessly. Teller is our next partner with $2,500 in prizes, and their challenge statement is pretty simple: to use the Teller Oracle in your project. It's a decentralized Oracle protocol that incentivizes open, permissionless network of data reporting and data validation, ensuring that data can be provided by anyone and checked by everyone. This is followed by LIT protocol. LIT protocol lets you create and manage distributed cryptographic key pairs for condition-based encryption and programmatic signing. They have $2,500 in bounties. Polybase is a Web3 replacement for Firebase, Postgres, and Supabase with native support for wallet-based permissions, token gating, and ZK proofs. And they are offering $2,500 in prizes. This is followed by Lighthouse. Lighthouse has a pretty simple challenge statement: best use of Lighthouse Storage SDK. It's a perpetual file storage protocol that allows the ability to pay once and store forever. That's it from my end for now. And we'll move on to the next section from Matt. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please drop them in chat. We will also have time for Q&A at the end of the call. Over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Nikki. Right, folks. So let me just share my screen here. There we go. Okay, hopefully you can see my slides okay?
Yep.
Yep, great. Okay, so I'm going to talk about why building on FVM. So I'm going to talk about the sort of the why of building on FVM, and then later on, my colleague Sarah is going to talk more about the specifics of FVM and a bit more of the what of FVM, right? So I'm going to talk a bit about the sort of opportunity and the kind of the market case for FVM kind of in a wider sense here. So yeah, I'm going to talk a bit about, like I said, why it matters, and then we'll talk a bit about, you know, getting started on the FVM kind of going forward. So there's a three kind of sort of parts to working with Filecoin, and this maps to, there was a 3-point sort of roadmap put forward, which was building the world's largest decentralized storage network, providing collecting humanity's data, and then allowing compute and useful services over that data. So if you kind of look at Filecoin enabling that, you've got sort of several layers here. And if you think about layer 0 as being just the storage layer, and that's what we've had now for the past couple of years within Filecoin, that you can store stuff on the network, then really FVM fits probably about layer 1 above that, which is compute over the state of the data. Now, this is in comparison to layer 2, which is compute over the data. So just to be clear here, FVM allows you to access information about the storage deals themselves. So this is receipts and information about how data is stored, where data is stored, when it is stored, and for how long. So this is not processing the actual data in and of itself, but this is processing the information about the storage deals. In terms of processing and doing the compute over data, there's a project called Bacchiao, and Bacchiao actually compute over data. There is actually a separate prize within this hackathon. There is an element to go over that. So if you are using both FVM for compute over state and you're using Bacchiao for compute over data, then there is a additional prize there available for you. So, too far there. So let's look at some of the things that people, some of the areas that people are building on FVM at the moment, and the kind of things that you can build on here. So things like perpetual storage of NFTs. So projects like Lighthouse and projects like NFT Storage. So NFT Storage has a project called NFT Forever, and they're using FVM to renew storage deals automatically kind of when they come to the end of their time there, so that they're stored perpetually. So you can use FVM to actually look up storage deals, find out when something's expiring, and when it comes up to its expiry date, you can actually programmatically create a new storage deal. And some of the workshops will cover areas like this kind of over the next week. Another area is data DAOs. So the idea that you can create a decentralized autonomous organization, a DAO, like you can on many other blockchains, but now you can add the element of controlling data within there. So you might have people collectively voting on and funding the storage of data. So one example, somebody came up to me at ETH Denver and was talking about a film festival. And they wanted to arrange a film festival in the format of a data DAO. So you'd actually have people voting on, you know, the best film of the festival, whatever it might be, but also regards to things like the storage of the film kind of long-term, the film's long-term. And then another element, getting into the sort of the DeFi realm, is Filecoin staking. So the idea that you can lock up the Phil token and use it as collateral and allow people to borrow against that. And what is interesting, we'll cover in a little bit, is that storage providers may have a requirement to actually borrow Phil in order to actually set up as a storage provider. So a number of these different use cases that FVM kind of unlocks can be grouped into various areas, and each of them is a pretty sizable market in and of themselves. And we're going to jump into these a little bit more detail as we go on, but just to kind of give an overview, we have general purpose storage tools, discovery and analytics, decentralized finance, the management of specialized data sets, and kind of integration and other services. So kind of looking through these one at a time, if we look at things like general purpose storage tools, so this is around seamless storage deal making, so increasing the ease by which users of the network can get data onto the network. So we have things like a deal client contract within the hard hat starter kit that you can have a play with, and this is around use cases to do with things like auto replication of storage and resilience of storage. So you might have multiple copies of storage, and if one of them disappears, then you can create a new storage deal in order to kind of replicate that. So yeah, there's a question here from Mohammed. We'll cover these probably later on. Might be best if we kind of cover the questions sort of in a block. We've got a Q&A section towards the end that we're going to talk about here. So most cloud providers have kind of a lock-in model at the moment, and the idea behind FVM and about Filecoin in general is to try and kind of break down that lock-in model and keep things more decentralized. So general purpose tools around that are always welcome. Discovery and analytics. So people want to know kind of where data is stored, how much is stored, where it's accessed, that kind of thing. On a decentralized network, that can be a little bit trickier. If you have a centralized network, you have one place in which you can measure some of these metrics. It's harder to do that on a more decentralized system, but there's some interesting use cases around there with things like reputation systems. So you are storing data, there's multiple different storage providers on the network. Well, which one do you choose? You can have things like reputation systems. And again, the network does actually keep certain metrics there. So exposing those to a user could be a very useful service that can be built on top of that, especially when you look at things like compliance. So certain data needs to be stored within certain regulatory environments. Things like GDPR, for example, means that people want to store data in certain jurisdictions. DeFi, decentralized finance. So I touched on this a little bit earlier. So there's some interesting use cases specifically with Filecoin, because underneath the Filecoin network is millions and millions of dollars worth of storage hardware providing the services to the network. So you have DeFi, but with physical infrastructure. And if you look at reports like Masari's report, they talk about DPIN, decentralized physical infrastructure, right? So you can, as a storage provider, for example, use your storage capacity as collateral within DeFi. And again, the actual blockchain can actually prove that storage capacity is available. And you also have potential future revenue that you could borrow against. So if you are a client, when you store data with a storage provider, you pay them a fee, but that fee is paid out to the storage provider over the duration of the storage deal. So if I make a storage deal for 2 years, then my fee is paid to the storage provider, my fee is put in escrow and paid out over the space of 2 years. You could have a DeFi system that can actually look at that and go, well, he's got some future revenue coming in, and that gives me perhaps some effectively like credit score for which I can borrow against that. Specialty data sets. So there's certain data sets that would be really valuable to have stored long term. So public science data sets, things like genome sequences, healthcare, that sort of thing would be great. There's some areas with regards to privacy, so encryption. For example, if you're storing things like consumer financial data, the Filecoin network by default is public, so you'd have to look at things like how you would encrypt that data set, how you'd access management, how you'd manage access to the data set as well. And one of the big things with Web3 is Web3 kind of disproportionately favors the aggregators of the data rather than the original creators. And one of the big sort of promises of Web3 is to be able to actually reward the creators themselves who are supplying this data. So, you could use FVM to actually supply funding directly to the people that are providing this data as well. And you could use FVM to actually sort of manage that process there. And then things like integration and other services. So getting data on and off the network, integrating with bridges. So we've got a couple of partners on here that offer bridging tools, and they'll be doing workshops kind of later on, and we'll go back and cover the categories again later on at the end of this talk. But there's a number of partners there that are offering bridges, and those bridges can bridge both assets, and they can actually bridge functionality and commands as well. So it might be something like you want to have something running on another blockchain, maybe like a layer 2 roll up on Ethereum like Polygon, but you actually want to access the storage capability of the Filecoin network and deal with storage deals, for example. So you could create something that might work cross chain. Now, each of these will have a sort of a different weighting. We don't have any sort of prescriptive weighting, but this kind of slide just gives you a bit of an idea of some of the factors that we might be looking at when judging this as well. So things like, how unique is the project you are building to Filecoin? If what you're building could be built anywhere and doesn't use any features unique to Filecoin, then that's probably not going to be scoring as highly in our minds as something that is using functionality that is unique to Filecoin. Similarly, with things like technical feasibility, impact to the fill economy, these are all elements here as well that, if you can demonstrate something that can actually capture value, that actually has competitive dynamics, addresses a particular market and a potential growth, then that's all going to be seen more favorably by the judges within the project. So why is now a great time to start building on FVM? So there's an easy on-ramp. We've created EVM or FEVM, the Filecoin Ethereum virtual machine. And so this allows you to use all your same EVM tooling. So if you've built anything on Ethereum or built anything on any EVM compatible network, you can use the same tooling. So Hardhat, Remix, Truffle, for example, you're writing code in Solidity, so that's all there. We've got a thriving community. If you go on to the Filecoin Slack or within the Discord, so this hackathon's happening within the IPFS Discord. So if you go on there, you'll find that people there that can help out as well. Similarly, strong support. So both in helping with this, but also in the wider case of the FVM ecosystem, we've got a number of hackathons, we've got a number of grants, we've got things like accelerator programs coming up, mentorships, all this kind of stuff to help you build out your use case. Filecoin FVM is open source to the core. Everything's on GitHub. You can have a look through it. You can contribute to the actual development of the software itself if you wish, and you can see how it's all working. And FVM is really kind of positioning itself as being a major factor of the Filecoin network. So it's got a very promising trajectory in that it is delivering on this promise of allowing programmability around the Filecoin network, right? So there we go. That's a kind of whistle-stop tour through of there about why you should be building on FVM. And then I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Sarah. I'm not sure if we want to answer some of these questions now, Nikki, or whether we want to do a sort of Q&A session right at the very end for all of them. How are we doing on time?
I think let's run through the tracks with Sarah and you, and then
Okay.
we can take all the questions at the end. Does that
Sure.
sound good?
Yep.
Cool. So can I share my screen?
Yep. I'll just stop sharing mine 1 second. There we go.
Cool. So thanks for sharing all the opportunities and like why it's fun and exciting to build on FVM. We are quickly going to do a little bit more of detailed Q&A on with Sarah and Matt on all the 5 hackathon tracks that we have for FVM Dataverse. And after that, we'll take all the questions. Okay, so the first one is data DAOs. There's a $6,000 grand prize on best data DAOs built on FVM that enable curation, usage, storage, and analysis of valuable data sets. Sarah, Matt, would either of you want to like elaborate on some great examples of data DAOs that you've seen?
Yeah, there's I mean, there's a couple of data DAOs are looking specifically at scientific data sets. For example, Lagrange is an example of one that is looking specifically at scientific data sets. That's quite interesting because scientific data sets tend to be quite large and often have like several funding partners, and have a public good to be kept around. So it's quite good to have some way of storing them long term. I don't know if you had any others, Sarah, that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, I think decentralized science is a pretty big one. I've also seen pretty interesting. So I think data DAOs, for anyone who's new to the concept, it's really about a DAO that gathers around a certain piece of a specialized data set that they all find important. Other than that, it could also be a normal DAO that has already been formed around like a certain cause or an interest, and then they are collecting data for their community for various users. So if you think about it in that way, you could use it for many different verticals. You can apply it many different ways that you want to. I think it's really cool that Matt mentioned decentralized science. That is a really big use case because academia has, these really large data sets that they want to keep and curate over time or reference over time as well. So archival data is a really great use case. Another way that you can think about data DAOs as like a very simple workflow that you could apply to any vertical that applies to your project, right? Could be around thinking of how you could use FVM to enable programmatic storage across your DAO. So every single time there's a new piece of data that has to be uploaded to be collected in your community, it can trigger an instance of FVM and it can automatically get your data stored onto Filecoin for your DAO. Once you get that data stored, you can think about access control, for example. So how can other people outside of your DAO access this content that your DAO is collecting? It could be, you could also collect money for access to that information, and then that adds to your DAO's treasury, and you could use that treasury amount funding for other causes or other needs in your DAO as well. So you can think of all these different ways to manage your DAO. That's a very simple workflow, and I think one really cool other example that I like to share is we did have an early builder team build out credit card information DAO. They're called Daln, D-A-L-N. And so they collect all this credit card information from consumers, people, consumers themselves, right? And then they collect all this information and then they open up the information to sell it to other companies that want to use the information. And so as a user, you get that the monetization profit directly to yourself. So you're actually owning your data in that way. So really cool ways to think about it, but just giving some ideas out here.
Cool. That's a lot of hackathon ideas in that little summary already. Cool. Let's move on to the next track. DeFi. What would be like some good DeFi ideas or projects, in your opinion?
So DeFi. So for example, lending and borrowing. So there's a good example is the Glyph staking pool that's just opened. So the Glyph staking pool, they've got a thing called Infinity Pool, and it allows individuals to fill the Filecoin token in a pool, and then will allow storage providers to borrow against that. So storage providers, when they set up, have to provide a certain amount of the fill token as collateral for their services. So this allows them access to that without necessarily having to buy it. They can borrow it and then basically have the future revenue pay off, service that debt, and the individual users get paid, the individual depositors get paid back an interest charge, for doing that, for example.
Yeah, and on top of that, there are many different ways you could do it. Staking pools are one way. The other way that really enables the data economy on Filecoin is around under collateralized loans. So you could have and it could be based off the staking pool itself, or you're collecting a pool of money, or having a smart contract in place so that it allows new storage providers or storage providers that maybe need more upfront funding to be able to run their operations to then participate in the data economy. You can also think about how you can make it even more lightweight so more people can participate as a storage provider. I think we did have some ideas from previous hackathons around enabling a web browser to help store data as well. I think it's from the team. I know Ocean Ursula was one of the builders for that project, and I'd love to see how that goes along. But yeah, many different ways that you could use DeFi to enable the data economy here. I also saw some pretty interesting projects that are not specific to enabling not focused on enabling the data economy. So for example, Jackrabbit Finance has a bond marketplace. And so with the unique capabilities of FVM, rather than to enable the data economy on FVM, they are seeing how they could have a bond exchange that could have these bonds store additional information within each of these bonds that could be minted as an NFT, for example. So many different ways that you can think about it, either how you can enable the data economy on Filecoin, which has a lot of liquidity and has a lot of potential for DeFi use cases, or how can you use FVM as a unique feature of storage within your DeFi project itself.
All right. Cool. Let's move to the next one, tools and infra.
Yeah, so this is around, improving the user experience for Filecoin. So Filecoin provides a number of kind of basic primitives for doing the storage, but users generally want to interact at a slightly higher level. Also, Filecoin, the storage deals within Filecoin can be quite large. So generally, storage providers are looking for storage deals of, say, 4 gigabytes and upwards, and many people are storing smaller amounts of data than that. So tools that help with the user experience of Filecoin would fit under here. So things that help support, say, bridging cross-chain and working with other ecosystems as well would fit into that. Anything that deals with access control, things like encryption, privacy, all of those kind of areas would all fit within here as well.
Cool. Anything to add on, Sarah?
No, yeah, pretty comprehensive. I mean, tools and infra is something that we're always looking out for. Get creative with it. We've seen a lot of interesting projects from different hackathons. Not sure if we collect them somewhere. Yeah, if you ask on Slack, we will find you a list of all the different projects that have been building, but really good ideas in there to check out.
Yeah, some of the best projects that we saw are linked on the FVM dev post, Dataverse dev post website. It links to some of the past hackathon projects, but we'll link it again. Cool. Programmable storage markets. What would be examples of this, or how do you define?
So if you think about programmable storage markets, just think of it more about how you can optimize what a storage marketplace would look like. So if you're thinking about, and this I think requires maybe a little bit of description if you're new to storage markets. We have quite good ideas and scenarios written up on the Request for Startups resource. which is you'll find in the resources page as well. But things that you can think about, for example, are perpetual storage, which Matt mentioned earlier on. Like how can you use a smart contract to make sure that your storage continuously renews, like the storage deal continuously renews without you having to do anything, right, from the renewal point, or maybe it just triggers a notification and you're like, yeah, I want to continue the storage, and it keeps being stored for you, which makes it super simple for the user. Another thing you can think about is like repair workers. So if let's say the contract were to be broken or there's something faulty with the contract, it can notice it for you and then make sure that that is renewed again or refreshed or repaired, right, the deal itself. So these do require a little bit of understanding of how the Filecoin data economy works and how the storage marketplace works on Filecoin. But once you get into the fundamentals, it should be pretty easy to come up with different ideas on how you can supplement the current storage marketplace that we have with FVM.
Yeah, just to kind of expand on that a little bit, just again to give a bit more context there. So storage providers, of which there are about 3,500, I believe, storage provider systems on the network at the moment, typically, as before, sort of pre-FVM, with Filecoin, it was up to the client to directly negotiate a storage deal with that storage provider. And that typically happened off-chain. So once you found your storage provider, then you would basically approach them and say, I've got this amount of data to store for this amount of time at this price. You would negotiate the deal. And then the first sort of time in which the blockchain kind of knows about it is when that deal is agreed and the deal is published to the network. Now with FVM, we can actually move a lot of that negotiation on-chain. So like I said, you have storage providers that are looking to store storage deals of between, say, 4 gigabytes and 32 gigabytes in size. They typically work on 32 gigabyte sectors. So it is more economical for a storage provider to try and fill that 32 gigabyte sector as full as they can. Yet on the other hand, you have storage clients that will have storage of many different sizes, often much, much smaller than that. So having some like brokerage service that now, because of FVM, could be on-chain and could be done in a sort of a more trustless manner that allows individuals to register sort of an intent to store something, and then that could be aggregated up to such a point where either maybe a storage provider could bid on it or it could be negotiated with a storage provider. There's many different sort of economic models which that can happen, but something in the middle there using FVM that allows you to kind of match up those storage clients and those storage providers. That's kind of what we're looking for here.
Cool. Right. Compute over data. This one's pretty hot, right now.
Yeah, it is pretty hot. And so expanding on what I mentioned earlier, that so FVM is mainly dealing with the storage deals themselves and how and where things are stored. Compute over data is actually running compute jobs on the actual data itself. So within Protocol Labs sort of ecosystem, there is a project called Bacalhau, and Bacalhau is a compute over data platform. Now, in and of itself, Bacalhau has no direct kind of blockchain or Filecoin or FVM kind of like connections in its purest state, but it can leverage some of the stuff within Filecoin and FVM itself. So for example, there is a bridge that they have created called Lilypad, and Lilypad is a bridge between FVM and compute over data. And they've got an example project called Waterlily that uses the stable diffusion text to image model, AI model. And so what can happen is you can create a prompt, or a smart contract rather, on FVM can emit a prompt. That prompt is then emitted as an event. The Lilypad bridge picks up that event, sends it to Bacalhau, runs a compute job that generates an image from that prompt. The image is stored on IPFS. The IPFS CID is returned back to FVM. FVM then mints a NFT using that IPFS CID as a URI to the asset within the NFT. So it kind of goes full sort of circle between FVM, Bacalhau, and back to FVM again. So this is kind of an area that could be of interest, and also as well it deals with funding as well. So it allows those compute jobs to actually be funded again via FVM, kind of locking up the funds in collateral and then in a escrow and then releasing them once the compute job has been done. So projects that are working with compute over data, but also integrating with FVM would all kind of come under here.
Cool. I think that covered it pretty well. We do have a few questions open right now, so maybe we can jump into them and answer them live, the ones that are in chat. And then we
You want me to just go over them? I've got a little list here.
Yeah. You can just throw in the question and
All right.
we can discuss.
So first question we have here is it possible to implement custom encryption policy that will only allow users to access if they match certain smart contracts? And is it possible to limit access to the storage depending on the smart contract and user wallet?
In short, yes, that is possible. So Filecoin doesn't provide any encryption in and of itself. So all the data on Filecoin is public. So you need to encrypt that beforehand. Doing an actual encryption within a smart contract is probably going to be too much computation for the actual smart contract itself, but the smart contract could help with the key management, and that's how you would deal with the access control. So you would have it such a way that the data is encrypted before it is stored on Filecoin. That key is then stored in such a way that the smart contract governs the access to the key, for example, and that is how that is dealt with. So yes, there's a couple of projects from previous hackathons. There's one called Creds by Rishikesh Kale. Certainly look that up because that might give you some inspiration there or something to build on as well that works in this same kind of area.
Yeah, there are some resources as well on the cheat sheet around access control. Like now we have various options. You have like Lighthouse, like as Matt mentioned, that encrypts the data beforehand for you. We also have Lit that is pretty new for us, and we'll be interested to see new integration, like new projects using Lit with FVM. So that's a very recent integration. And then lastly, we have, Kratz protocol. I'm going to try to find a project. I can add it to the cheat sheet. So people have actually used it in the hackathon project as well. It was created in a hackathon for other hackathon projects. So you can definitely use that as well.
Thank you. There was also, I got a few questions about what languages we can use to write smart contracts right now.
At the moment for this hackathon, it is anything that compiles down to EVM bytecode, which is basically Solidity, or any language that compiles, other language that compiles down to EVM bytecode, but Solidity is the only one that we're sort of supporting at the moment on the FEVM. To be clear, the FVM below that does allow, we do have SDKs for Rust, Go, etc. to compile down what we call native actors, but that functionality is not enabled on FVM at the moment, but will be enabled later on in the year to allow people to create what we call native actors at that level. But at the moment, it's the FEVM, the Filecoin Ethereum virtual machine. So this hackathon is just concerned with things to do with projects that are written predominantly in Solidity and that compile to EVM bytecode.
Yeah, that being said, like if you are interested in the native FVM outside of this hackathon, we do have different SDKs that you could use in Go, Rust, and assembly script. But you will have to develop those within your local net because, as mentioned, FVM native is not live today on testnets and mainnet, and you can still experiment with it outside of the hackathon.
Thank you. And I got questions about some bridges. Folks were wanting to know if there was a Cardano bridge and some other bridges. It might be easier if you guys just want to let us know what bridges are currently available.
Yeah, so currently there's Sealer and Axeler are the two main bridges that are available. And both of those, I believe, both those are partners in this hackathon, right, Nikki? I believe they,
Axeler,
yes.
Both, yeah. Axeler, yes.
Axeler, yes. Okay. But those are the two bridges that have launched on mainnet on the network, and they support bridging of assets as well as bridging of sort of messaging backwards and forwards as well. And there's a specific question about Cardano bridge. I'm not sure. I know that Axeler, I believe, supports Cardano, but I don't know if they directly have a Cardano to FEVM bridge running at the moment. But by all means, that'd be an interesting thing to create. If you created that as part of the hackathon, that would be pretty cool.
Awesome, thank you. And then got some technical questions where folks are wanting to know kind of how FEVM compares against other EVMs, questions about runtime and different things like that. So I don't know if you guys want to talk about a little comparison.
Sure. The FEVM basically is an Ethereum compatible runtime. So as far as the vast majority of tooling, it looks just like Ethereum, right? You can use your MetaMask, Hard Hat, Remix, et cetera, It all looks basically like Ethereum. The differences you'll note are the block time is slightly different. So the block time on mainnet is 30 seconds. And the gas calculation is slightly different. So gas is basically cheaper than Ethereum mainnet, probably more expensive than something like a layer 2 rollup on Ethereum, though. So it kind of fits halfway between the two there. But otherwise, it'll look pretty much exactly like Ethereum. So I think I don't think there's any major differences there from that side of things.
Yeah, and if you want to get into the details and geek out, have put in the docs page there that highlights all the differences. Yeah, but it shouldn't feel different. Like we've really planned to create like a seamless experience with developing. If you're an EVM developer with using FVM, it should not feel too different.
Yeah, and one of the main ones I will just call out, just looking at that list, is addressing. Just be aware that so as part of FEVM, we created a new address class on Filecoin, the addresses that start F4. And so F410, any address that starts F410 is an Ethereum style address, and is a delegate address that can be converted to an Ethereum style address. So you can convert from an F410 address to an address that starts 0x in Ethereum style. So that's something, and most of the blockchain explorers, so if you go to like explorer.glyph.io, for example, and put either style of address in, it will convert backwards forwards for you, so you can see that. So if you're working at the Filecoin level with the sort of Filecoin tools like Lotus and whatever, you're probably dealing with an F4 address. If you're working with things like MetaMask, you'll be working with a 0x address. So just to point out that those two are convertible between each other. But if you're sticking just at the Ethereum side, you'll probably just be dealing with addresses that start 0x.
Awesome. And then I've got one here. Is it possible to access any non-standard EVM library or non-standard FVM functionality as a library?
Good question. I'm not entirely sure specifically what they are referring to here.
Which library?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but
if
I mean,
you want to elaborate on that in the chat while they start an answer here, that would be cool. Michael,
yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, if you've got any specifics on there, but basically it's because it's an EVM, you're in a sandbox, right? Now you can upload any Solidity EVM code. So if you have libraries in there that you're using as part of that, then you can upload those just in the same way you can do with Ethereum. But there's also, we have some built-in actors as well that deal with Filecoin specific stuff. So there's a library, filecoin.sol, and filecoin.sol allows you to access things like the market actor and the miner actor within the network that allow you to interact with Filecoin specific functionality there.
Yeah, so I hope that should answer your question, Mikael, because I saw you just added an additional question around whether you can access FVM specific functionality by an EVM library. The answer is really filecoin.sol as a library. You can then access Filecoin, the Filecoin protocol methods, to be able to call that through the library itself.
Yeah. And
link to source. Okay, yeah, we'll send across the source for you in a second.
Yeah. And there's one more question here about how the DeFi primitives such as lending and staking pools look different for FVM as opposed to what we're already seeing on other ecosystems. This is a great question. I kind of alluded to it earlier on, and that is one of the big things that is unique about Filecoin is the fact that underpinning all of this, you have physical hardware, millions and millions of dollars of hardware. Just to put this in perspective, the total storage capacity on Filecoin is about 12 or 13 exabytes of data. That's 12 or 13 trillion gigabytes of data. It's 1% of the total data center storage capacity worldwide. So the Filecoin network really is truly huge, and there's a huge amount of infrastructure underneath that is underpinning that is effectively available to use as part of DeFi sort of primitives, for example. So as I mentioned, a storage provider, when they negotiate a storage deal, when a client and a storage provider negotiate a storage deal, the storage client has to put up the fee into an escrow. The storage provider puts up some collateral in the escrow as well. And the fee is paid out to the storage provider over the duration of the storage contract. So if I negotiate to store 10 gigabytes of data for 2 years, and it's going to cost me, 5 fil, then over the space of that time, then that 5 fil will be sent to the storage provider over, slowly over those 2 years in a linear fashion. So from a DeFi point of view, you can actually look at that and see, okay, this storage provider actually has future revenue coming in. And you can actually look at that on chain, and it's all verifiable and provable on chain that they have this, future revenue coming in. So they can potentially borrow against that future revenue. And you can do things like set the payout address of a storage provider to be a smart contract. So a storage provider can actually agree and say, okay, the fees that are coming in as a result of this deal, instead of coming directly to me, actually go to service this smart contract that might say service in part the loan, a loan that was made, and then in part back to the storage provider. So that's where I think it differs than DeFi and other networks, in that you have, this storage system and these storage deals as a marketplace that you can kind of interact with as part of that DeFi.
I have one more here. Says, is a DAO required to allow people to retrieve or store data on Filecoin without having to handle fill?
Oh, I think I answered that one.
Okay.
So in order to answer that again, if you want to store anything on Filecoin, you using FVM, you have to run a transaction to execute the smart contract or execute the functions on the smart contract. So you still run the transactions. The difference is that you would just use your MetaMask wallet. It's actually pretty simple. You might see it connected to your Ethereum address, but then it would run it in fill because of the way that we have that Ethereum JSON RPC API. So everything should look the same as an EVM contract. So you still have to handle fill when you run the transaction, but technically you could batch the data in your DAO. You could collect like 10 different pieces of data if you want to reduce running that transaction over and over. Then the difference there is that you have to figure out how you want to sort. So that whole piece of 10 pieces of data will be stored as a whole one piece of data in Filecoin. So you have to think about how you want to be able to retrieve that, for the different use case, like the different users wanting their data back. So that's something to think about. But technically you could.
I think as well, there might have been an element to that question about using other tokens to denominate your data DAO. So again, you could use any ERC20 token on the network, and some of the bridges like Sealer and Axeler allow you to bridge things like USDC or USDT or wrapped Bitcoin or Ethereum onto the network, and you could use those within your DAO as well. So say you wanted to actually denominate your DAO in Bitcoin, then you could use wrapped Bitcoin that's come via the Sealer bridge and use that as part of your DAO as well. So you could use any ERC20 token. And you can create your own ERC20 tokens, as Dawn points out. Yep.
Yeah, that is a quick start in the docs. I'm just trying to copy it in here, but yes, you can definitely do that.
And they've done such a good job documenting the process. I was able to do it in like 5 to 10 minutes. So yay. That's all I have for questions, you guys.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So that was our Q&A. We have about 2 minutes left. I have a quick reminder for you all to please join the Discord. Make sure you're able to see all the hackathon channels. If you're not able to see them, you can email us. All of this information is available on the dev post update section. Be there for the workshops. The Google Calendar is linked in this presentation. I'll be sharing the link to this presentation by the time I finish talking. And check out all the hackathon resources. Again, available on the DevPost website. It has lots of links over there. And yeah, start hacking. That's all I've got for you guys. And I have 2 minutes to give you all back. Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much for joining. Let me share the link to this deck right now, and then I'll also be emailing it, but just in case for the folks who are already here. All right, there you go. Cool, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll be sharing all the resources async as well. Yeah, hope you have a good hackathon.
Great. Thanks a lot all.